world where misery reigns supreme. We're turning to the Gaza Strip. This is where aid agencies are warning of a growing famine. Months after conflict, blockades and the collapse of essential services have left hundreds of thousands, including many children, at risk of starvation. Food supplies are running low. Humanitarian corridors struggling to stay open. The United Nations says the crisis is reaching catastrophic levels. And I want to bring in a UN Special Rapporteur on the right to health, Dr. Tlaleng Mofokeng, and Humanitarian Policy Lecturer, Dr. James Smith, who has worked in Gaza since October 2023. To the pair of you, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Tlaleng, I'm going to bring you in first. When we think now of this declaration by the Food Security Phase Classification Hunger Monitor, the IPC, now finally and officially declaring famine in Gaza. We know it's claimed hundreds of lives and counting. The majority of children are dead. But it's taken quite long for them to make this declaration when local NGOs have been reporting on this for months. What are your thoughts on this development now?
I'm still equally enraged and quite disappointed in how long it has taken the international community to declare what we have known to be a structure that has been designed in Gaza to lead to these conditions of famine. We knew already more than a year ago that food and starvation was already being used as a tool, especially when the crossings were closed and a lot of the supplies, which were at the time, including medical supplies, were unable to actually get into Gaza. So these has been deliberate actions which has been genocidal in intent, but also in implementation. And so for me, Iman, the problem is that a lot of these declarations are coming far too late from institutions and organizations which has authority and the power to have also acted in prevention, not just in reaction to what is happening, but also in prevention. And they have failed on both accounts to prevent a genocide, to prevent ongoing suffering of Palestinians, and therefore, as well now, as we've seen, to actually take appropriate timeous action when we see the results of this genocide.
They had the power, didn't exercise it. Before I bring James in, Tlaleng, why do you think that happened?
It's because we have dehumanized Palestinians and we continue to dehumanize their struggle. We have allowed Israel and its allies to continue on this. And we have to remember that Gaza is not a natural geographic point. It's the largest open-air prison. And that was the truth even before October the 7th. And that has been allowed to happen. And so the Palestinians' right to self-determination and to sovereignty has never been something that the international community has ever respected. And so it would be shocking, actually, that now suddenly they would see Palestinians as fully human and fully equal, when for many years, even my own mandate at the UN has had to intervene, has had to write to the member state of Israel on multiple accounts, on many different health issues, including during COVID, for example. So we know historically that Palestinians have never been seen as fully human and fully worthy of their dignity. Hence, you see the kinds of escalations of violence, but the kind of new levels of hell that have been unlocked. And what we have now called medicide, which is this deliberate attack and starving of healthcare workers and the destruction of health systems in the speed, in the destruction, and in the totality of which those attacks have happened into the medical system.
You invoke the term hell, and the gates of hell will be unleashed, according to military authorities in the region. James, you spent months working in Gaza since October 2023. Take us inside what you witnessed and how the blockade and collapse of essential services translates into daily life for ordinary Palestinians, especially children.
I mean, the first thing I'd like to say is that I agree with absolutely everything that Dr. Mofokeng is saying here. You know, the conditions in Gaza, even the most sympathetic or attentive media outlets have failed to capture the depths of depravity that the Israeli state and the Israeli military have unleashed on the Palestinian people in Gaza. When I was first in Gaza in December of 2023, we were already seeing patients with signs of acute malnutrition. The organization I was working with at the time reported on that publicly in the first few days of January 2024. Michael Fakhri, the UN Special Rapporteur for the Right to Food, has repeatedly sounded the alarm that Israel is using starvation as a weapon, as have reputable human rights experts and human rights organizations internationally. And as Dr. Mofokeng is saying, you know, we have effectively just watched this happen. Many people refer to indifference, but I think that would be too forgiving, frankly, of several states internationally. There are states that are complicit and have colluded in Israel's genocidal violence, and that, of course, extends to the deprivation of the basics needed simply to sustain human life, food and water. And the conditions in the hospitals from as early as the first few weeks of October 2023 were beyond horrific. The Ministry of Health in Gaza announced, I believe in the third week of October 2023, that the healthcare system had collapsed. It's simply a testament to the sheer determination, the commitment to care, the commitment to resist, that Palestinian healthcare workers have continued to provide health services under the most horrific conditions. And as Dr. Mofokeng has said, you know, many of these healthcare workers have been killed, detained, injured. Approximately 1,600 have been killed. This is unprecedented in any conflict in history, frankly.
Tlaleng, let me bring you back in, because as we hear you speak, and we knew that the warnings, signs were already there. We saw the activities by the international community. We've seen the protests. We've seen the targeted assassinations of journalists trying to bring the story of what's happening on the ground in the occupied territories to the rest of the world. And yet, we still find ourselves in a situation where there is an escalation in what we're witnessing and what you've called the genocidal intent being made manifest on the ground. There have been in the past arrest warrants from the ICC for Israeli officials over alleged war crimes. Is there a precedent set? What can be done to break the back of what we are seeing unfold on our television screens where it's possible, of starving people and dying communities?
You know, Iman, the irony is that the United Nations has decided that this decade we are in, ending in 2028, as the Nelson Mandela Decade of Peace, which is meant to reaffirm their commitment to upholding the sovereign equality of all states and respect for their territorial integrity and political independence. And all of this is happening within that particular context. And just a few days ago, the Secretary General was talking about Nelson Mandela, and we know we had July in South Africa, which is a global day of Nelson Mandela Day. And it's within that particular context for me that we know that people cannot say that they did not know. There cannot be a person that can feign some ignorance into this particular issue. We know for a fact that other member states are providing Israel with diplomatic cover. They are providing them with economic, political, cultural cover as well, that they are able to actually not enforce the ICC or, in fact, the ICJ advisory documents that have come and opinions of the ICJ, which, by the way, September is the deadline for those. And what is really important is that we need to understand that it is by design that Israel and its allies are wanting to literally bring the human rights system to its knees. It's by design and its deliberate action that they want the international law and international humanitarian law to be brought to its knees so that they are not held accountable. The extent to which other member states are able to hold other member states accountable is an issue of the General Assembly, the Human Rights Council, and the Security Council. And that power asymmetry that exists within the United Nations replicates itself in the geopolitics of the world around. Hence, you see a situation now where impunity reigns everywhere within what Israel and its allies are doing on the Palestinian territory and the Palestinian people.
Well, let me pick that up with you, James, and just in closing, and I'm so sorry that our time has evaporated so quickly. Israel argues that aid agencies are to blame for failing to collect aid at border crossings, and that it is Hamas that is responsible for hunger. We've seen, and I think, Tlaleng, you've just shared moments ago, UN and independent reports contradicting that. What does this narrative, James, reveal about the politics of humanitarian access in Gaza?
I mean, Israel has denied absolutely every allegation raised against it. The allegation of genocide, the allegation of manufacturing famine, the allegation of depriving humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza. We really shouldn't take any statement issued by the Israeli government or the Israeli military as even remotely credible. By the US government's own admission, USAID released data saying that this allegation that aid was being stolen was fabricated, didn't stand up to any scrutiny. What we're seeing here is a very well-established propaganda machine that has long been used to obfuscate the truth. And the only thing that can really strike at Israel is the truth. And we need to continue to document and to speak out with respect to the reality on the ground. Simply dropping pallets of food on one side of the armistice line and then saying that you've upheld your legal obligations is nonsense. The UN agencies have been unanimous in saying that they don't have the conditions within Gaza to safely pick up and distribute food aid. It is impossible to speak of any sort of a functional humanitarian system under the conditions of genocidal violence. You can't have functional humanitarianism amid a genocide. And this is why the UN agencies and many, many others, ourselves included, have repeatedly called for an immediate end to Israel's genocidal violence inside Gaza, such that the pre-existing Palestinian-led, UN-supported humanitarian system can be re-established. So to avoid even deeper, a catastrophe within a catastrophe.
Thank you to you both. Appreciate your time and your perspective this morning.